Hey guys, how are you all doing? The Age of Mage surges onward, now taking advantage of one of the weapons that was recently buffed in the 1.07 patch. That weapon being the Onyx Lord's Greatsword. It's actually a curved greatsword, but whatever. But since that's such a gravity magic oriented weapon, I decided to just commit to the theme, and thus what was once Moonsworn Yurie, a frost build, is now Onyx Lord Yurie, a gravity mage. What does a gravity mage do? Well, I'll just let the gravity do the talking. As you all know at this point, if you've watched any of my videos, I'm very into aesthetics for my invaders, and in order to understand what I'm going for with this build, you should know who the Onyx and Alabaster Lords are in Elden Ring's lore. And while I ramble on about the lore, I'll also show the stats and equipment for this build, which is a rune level 50 build with plus 10 and plus 4 weapons. The Alabaster Lords are a race of ancients with skin of stone who are said to have risen to life when a meteor struck long ago. You can find several Alabaster Lords throughout the lands between. Most of them drop spells or weapons that tell the story of how they were the ones who taught General Radahn his gravity magic in Celia, which he then used to ride his tiny horse Leonard, but also to halt the stars in the sky. Now, those are the Alabaster Lords, but there's also the Onyx Lords, who are identical in practically every single way, except their stone skin is darker, and they wield a golden curved greatsword, and I believe are connected in some way to the destruction of the Eternal Cities by Astel. That's just my own theory, but if you're curious about this, look up the item description and design of the spell Meteorite, and then compare that with the description and design of Meteorite of Astel. There's a lot of similarities to draw there. Anywho, I've tried my best to emulate the look that these Onyx Lords have, and the best way to do that is with the Zamor mask, since it gives you that inhuman, extra long looking neck when wearing the mask, and some white hair in the back as well. So this build is centered around three things: aggressing with the running R1s and R2s from the curved greatsword, harassing my opponents with an assortment of spells, and then winning trades with Onyx Lord's Repulsion, which is the Ash of War of the weapon. Now, there's not much to say about the curved greatsword running attacks, other than it's still a curved greatsword in a From Software game, which has been good in pretty much every game since they became a staple weapon class. A quick note is that your bread and butter are the running R1s, and the running R2 is an excellent, heavy-hitting change-up with good forward momentum. We'll come back to spells in a minute, but for now let's move right on to the most important and unique attack that this build does, that being Onyx Lord's Repulsion. The skill was recently buffed in the 1.07 patch, and according to the patch notes, it was given more poise and quote-unquote more repelling effect power. I have no idea what that means in terms of repelling power, but I know that when they say poise, they really mean hyper armor. This means that you can now tank at least 2 attacks from weapons as heavy as halberds, lances, and greatswords and still repel people. As you've seen before, repel does quite a bit of damage, but more importantly, it knocks people down. This of course moves it into the S tier of the Invader Fun Havers tier list, which is a very objective list I just made up right now. But the ability to knock people over is a time-honored tradition in From Software games. Anyone who has played Dark Souls 3's PvP has encountered that one guy who spams force on those buttresses in Pontiff. And what do you know, of course they migrated right on over to Elden Ring, and found the exact same type of buttresses for that gimmick. Except this time, it is I who will be doing the repelling. Now get off of my level. This is also just a very nice demonstration that Onyx Lord's Repulsion has a wide enough hitbox to go through walls and hit your opponents. Another nice aspect of this Ash of War is that it looks just like Gravitas, so everyone assumes it's Gravitas when it is in fact an explosion outwards. It's basically just the second part of Radahn's Swords' Ash of War, minus the big yelling at the beginning. So a general PSA when fighting this weapon: it's not Gravitas, do not try to jump over it. You will just take a lot of damage and get swatted out of the air. This Ash of War does share something with Gravitas, which is this property where on the initial stab downwards into the ground, it has a hitbox, which you can use to stun your opponents. That hit from the initial thrust does not true combo into the explosion part of the Ash of War, but it does stop hyper-aggressive opponents in their tracks before they then get blown away by the explosion. What you'll see happen a lot is people will get hit by the first thrust and then immediately try to swing out of that stun only to get blown away. Waves of Darkness has this exact same property as well, which is great for getting someone to back off of you for just a moment. But what makes it even better is that it absolutely does true combo into the first and maybe the second wave from the Ash of War, making it an excellent trade against multiple, aggressive opponents, almost instantly neutralizing their pressure. There's quite a few other weapons I'm able to use here with a 20 strength and 14 dexterity stat split. I'm able to use the other curved greatswords, which are always powerful when infused with frost at this level. I'm able to use the meteoric blade, which is just fine. It has a meh Ash of War with just gravitas, but it has those good Ichimonji R2s. I'm also able to use Loretta's Warsicle, which is honestly not that great of a weapon, all things considered, but it's still a halberd with a good moveset, and hey, they buffed Loretta's Slash to now make it a true combo in most cases if the first slash lands. Moving on to the spells. Well, this is supposed to be a gravity mage, right? At rune level 50, it's not really feasible to hit the 36 intelligence required for collapsing stars, like I was able to for Bug Mage. But that's alright, we still have Gravity Well, which is actually the best gravity spell in the game, because it's just easy to spam and quite FP efficient. It also requires some semi-decent timing to actually dodge correctly, plus gets a 30% damage buff from using the Meteoric Staff. So it ends up having a pretty decent DPS for a spell with its high damage and tendency to land. Of course I have Slicer and some sort of Shard type spell for finishers, although I've replaced Swift Glintstone Shard with Night Shard for added outer space aesthetics. The spell that surprised me the most though was definitely Rock Sling. Now I've long labeled Rock Sling as a ganker spell, bad on its own but effective when you have to focus on other attacks coming your way, and that's mostly still true. But as mages we have a way of creating more attacks, and that of course is Magic Glintblade, which honestly might be the best spell in the game. It's FP efficient, it does good damage regardless of what level you're at, and it's a delayed attack that simulates the experience of having another player launch attacks at your opponents. So while Rock Sling on its own is easily dodgeable, having two Glint Blades firing at the same time certainly makes it more difficult to dodge, and at the very least forces an erratic roll, which we can exploit. Oh, and Rock Sling also has this neat property where even if someone rolls into you while you're casting it, it will still track your opponents and travel backwards towards them. What this does is essentially just makes its relatively long cast time harder to punish with melee attacks. Now, I could be more efficient with all of my other spells if I use something like the Demi-Human Queen's Staff, but I wanted to encourage myself to use the few gravity sources I have access to, so I'm rolling with the Meteorite Staff, which of course fits the aesthetic. Have I used the word aesthetic enough in this video, in my last several videos? I don't know about that. Anyways, because this is a crucial part of magery these days, I should mention that I'm using the magic boosting tier, as well as the tier that raises intelligence in my Wondrous Flask of Physic. This just boosts my damage across the board, increases the scaling with the Meteorite Staff, and allows me to hit the requirements for the spell Meteorite, which is quite frankly absolutely useless in PvP, so don't bother with it. I like it for PvE, it melts giant enemies like dragons, trolls, and crabs, but cannot seem to hit another player at all. It's still fun though, and of course it has aesthetics. So yeah, not a ton else to talk about except general goings-on in the lands between. I still get invasions at Boilprawn Shack that drive me totally insane, but now they're just kind of strange and bizarre, like I just don't get the interactions here. What's happening? Why did you do that? What did you hope to accomplish by blowing yourself up not once, but twice? Why did you go through the effort of acquiring both Rupturing Tears and then turning on the Taunter's Tongue? All of these questions will never be answered because this is Miyazaki's vision for fleeting interactions in multiplayer. Just fascinating stuff. Other interactions often leave me with more questions still. I invaded this one world where already alarm bells are going off in my head, a red just died, there's a blue in the world, pretty standard Taunter's Tongue stuff. The blue gets sent home, and I'm just kind of like, why? Makes little sense to me, but okay, maybe they just want a duel. I've largely gotten over my grudge against people who really want to duel in this game, that's fine, but I don't appreciate the use of Barrier of Gold, but again, whatever, we'll just deal with that too. Ultimately, we have a pretty fun duel, and Quickstep Grave Scythe is a very, very interesting playstyle that I kind of want to try more of down the line. But then later, I invaded the same host, except now we're in a nearby cave to the last location I invaded them in. and this time they're not messing around. They have 2 other phantoms. Or, I guess summons now. We can't really call them phantoms. Whatever. And after a long, drawn-out fight that consisted of me running for my life and hitting them with waves of darkness turn and burns, I'm able to kill both of their phantoms, but at the cost of literally all of my healing flasks. So I've been hit with rot pots, and I've been poisoned. I need a moment to cure those status effects, and then locate the host for a rematch. And it's a fight that I know I probably can't win. They seem like a competent player, and I'm all out of heals. But no, Fogwalled. And like, why? Why Fogwall me? You're gonna beat me! I'm not left disappointed or angry here, I'm just confused. I even invaded the occasional AFK farmer, and in this instance, while I'm trying to locate a decent sniping spot, they managed to kill themselves. How? Why? I don't get it. So yes, these are strange times indeed in the lands between. And not just for the people I'm invading, it's a strange time for me as well. My long-held devotion to the offhand melee meta of Dark Souls 3 has been cast aside for staves and sacred seals, and the interactions with other players grows ever stranger. But we shall press on with our Age of Mage, into the unknown and chill night, and whatever exaltation or horror the DLC might bring. And so, that's all for me guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.